All right, welcome everybody. We have Alex from WMD, aka Nasty Nachos. We're gonna have a lot to talk about. If you guys have any questions, we have the chat pulled up here, so feel free to ask any questions. But yeah, so welcome, Alex. Thanks so much for coming to hang out and chat modular and house and techno and all that good stuff. So
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
yeah, welcome, man. Um, yeah, so to kick this off, I kind of want to start with how did music where did music kind of fall into place for you? Like this is like early on.
Oh yeah, I kind of been playing music like as far as I can remember. Like my whole life. It's just been a part of my life. I my parents were both musical. My dad still plays a lot. He plays harmonica, and he's always trying to push um, kind of the boundaries of what you think that instrument does. He's always making like he plays jazz. So most people think when they think of a harmonica, it's like just like blues riffs and whatever. But he's like doing really cool techniques to push it into a more smooth sounding instrument, as well as like playing chromatically on a diatonic harmonica. So he's like really inspiring with that. Um, but yeah, so he played when I was young, and then both of my brothers. I'm the youngest of three kids, so I had two brothers, and they played. And so for me, it was like they were in band and stuff, and then the oldest brother played bass. The middle brother, he started playing guitar, and so it only fit that I would play drums. And so then we had the band. So I played drums. We now had like the family band. We could just jam. We could do whatever. And then as they graduated high school and moved on to different things, I slowly figured out how to play their instruments so I could continue to like finish the band, because I've always been into like finished recordings. And so I took piano lessons at a young age, and went through high school and did all the band stuff to jazz band and that. And then as those my two brothers started to move out, it was like get a tape machine and record the guitar, and then I would record that tape machine through a mixer into another recorder, and I'd play the drums to what I had played the guitar on, and then I'd record it back, and I'd get sound degradation every time I went from machine to machine, and more noise. But I also got another track, and so I was like multi-tracking in that kind of primitive way, and then that's kind of what we got me into production. I was like always into finishing stuff, and then I was always in bands and whatnot, and I was always the one who wanted to figure out how to, put recordings out and like get us recordings to get the gigs and to sell merch and stuff like that.
So is when was this? Is this like high school?
Yeah, so high school and into college, and so I played into college. I was in a math rock band, and I played drums, and we were recording a bunch, and it was super rad. We were like punk rock as hell. It was so much fun. Um, but those guys were both into things that were not going to push the band any further. I can just say that. Um, and so I started to get into yet again. I was like, well, I want to do something that's gonna further. Um, I want to keep pushing further, and but I want to be in something that sounds complete. I don't want to just like pick up an acoustic guitar and make tracks. So I bought with one of my other friends who was in the same boat. We bought a Moog MG1 and a Roland TR-707. This was in college. I was probably like 20, maybe 21. Um, Maybe a little, yeah, probably anywhere between 19 and 21. We bought this thing, and like we bought a loop pedal that could save loops. And so that was the big deal, is we could take the drum machine and we could loop it, and then we could overdub the bass line onto that, and then we could save that, and it's like, cool, that's the A part. And then we would make another part and be like, cool, that's the B part. And then I found out about the band Holy Fuck, who just used like all guitar pedals. It's like a bass player, a drummer, and then they just have like tables full of gear, two other guys that face each other, and they're kind of like jammy, but it's like basically like these rad grooves that are super danceable. And then these guys just like making noise and cutting it up and making all these crazy sounds on top of it. And so I got really into that idea. And so what we did is we used the loop pedal as our basis, where we'd have the drums and the bass stored, and then we'd just make noise and sing over the top of it. And I did that for a few years in a band. It was called Man Cub. And then this guy, Shane, came up to me. He goes by Man Made Madman. He's the homie. And he came up to me one day after a show and was like, "What are you doing with all this stuff on the table?" You know? And so I told him like what kind of gear we were using and all that. And he was like, "Well, whenever you want to get into modular, just let me know," because he had it. And he's like, "I know that that's the next logical step for you. So just like whenever you're ready." And so, yeah, I was probably like, that probably happened when I was like 24, 23, 24. And he introduced me into modular, let me borrow some stuff. I bought like a happy ending kit and some analog solution stuff and some Pittsburgh stuff. Like fried it right away by plugging it in backwards, you know, just like made all those mistakes. And then Shane let me borrow some stuff. I was able to make sound with this thing. And then, yeah, I was like, the modular thing just kind of came from the idea of being able to put everything into a suitcase. You know, it's like going from tables, you know, bringing backpacks full of pedals, or like I had at one point, still have it, a pedal board that was 2 feet by 4 feet with a lid on it. So I could show up to the gig with just that. But the Velcro was never strong enough. You know, the pedals, you'd show up and the pedals would be in the bottom of the thing and you'd always have to do it. And cables would always break. It was always just a huge pain. So once I kind of figured out that modular was the step of being ultra portable as well as durable, that's what really got me into it. As you know, like I feel like the first thing that got me into it was all these sound possibilities, but then it was like, oh shit, I can put this in a suitcase and travel and do all that. But yeah, that's really it, man. I've just been doing it my whole life as far as music goes, and I've been playing in bands. Like I was in a punk band when I was 13, through like 17, you know, just all the way through high school. I was always like, I was a front man and I was singing and making pop punk and shit. And then, yeah, in college, I got more into math rock and more into like weird time signatures. And I was playing the drums, a lot more like angsty stuff. And that got me into instrumental music for sure. And then also kind of into house music. Like that's like what started turning me onto that, because I found out about bands like Chick Chick Chick. And, you know, Tortoise is not really a great music example for house music, but at the same time, like just instrumental, like progressive rock, jazz influenced stuff, like that was just like a huge mind opener for me. It's like no more just like power chords and singing about stupid shit. It's like actually making stuff that makes you feel something. Yeah, so like I feel like that's pretty much the story of me getting into music. It's just been a thing.
I can totally relate on all those fronts. Oh man, when you're talking about being a drummer and then just having to play everything else, it's like,
yeah, I mean that's really it. It's like I was the drummer and then I always had to do something else, and it was like I really like drumming because I can, from that perspective, I usually can hear like if the guitar player's struggling with where the riff should go next or how to turn it around. I usually can hear that and be like, hey, why don't you try something like this? And it's like a great place to produce from. It's like the drummer's seat, you know? And I never really understood what I was doing when I just played the drums, besides annoying the guitar player, because I'm like, just let me play it really fast, you know? I know how it should go.
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and then, you know, it's just the kind of the natural progression. Like people become more unreliable and you figure out way to use machines or whatever tools you have at your disposal to like get the feelings out that you've been saying you want to get out.
It was always fun bringing drums to a gig and then also being the PA guy. It's the worst.
I'm still that guy. Yeah, man. I like, that's the funny thing. Like when you're a drummer, I don't know. It just depends. I feel like just kind of depends on, it doesn't really matter what instrument, but when you have that drummer's mindset, it's like, I was the guy, I always had this house that had the room. So it was like, we're going to practice here, the drums will be here, and then like, hey, we're going to go play this gig. Can you just bring the shit? I'm a little busy. Can you just show up with the stuff? It's like, and I was the guy with the band too. So it's like, sure, I'll load up 2 half stacks, a bass stack, all the drums by myself. Then I'll drive it to the venue. I'll have 2 beers in the 6 hours or whatever we're there, because I know that I'm the guy who has to drive home and unload it all. And it's like, you get help here and there, but it's like, that's the funny shit. It's like, when you're in that vibe, and you're in big bands, that's definitely like, it always lands on someone, unless everyone lives together.
Meanwhile, the vocalist and the guitarist and the bassist, they're just all complaining about everything.
Yeah, dude. Or like, you didn't get there on time. It's like, yeah, dude, I had to load all your shit. And that's like what I think about electronic music. People are like, you don't really do as much. I'm like, yeah, exactly, and that's what I love. I don't have to bring as much. I don't have to it's like, it's nice. And I think that most electronic musicians, especially hardware musicians, will do that same thing where like the first time they play, they'll bring like a football field worth of stuff, and then like by the 5th time they play a show, you're like, oh dude, yeah, you got a drum machine and a synth. Like, that's, yeah, you understand,
Yeah. So right now you're kind of on like a house kind of vibe, but it sounds like that's not what you started with. So can you kind of talk about how you ended up there? Because so by the way, Alex's music, Nasty Nachos, is on nastynachos.bandcamp.com, and you can check out this Man Cub. There's a couple of 3 Man Cub projects.
Yeah.
Yep. I peeped them, man. I heard some like did you ever do chip tunes?
No, I was just super influenced by that, because it's like, I didn't know how to use an envelope, so it was like, all right, we're just going to use like saw waves or square waves.
Yeah. Okay. I was like, wow, this sounds like making chip tune.
Yeah, it totally sounds like that, but it was inspired for sure.
All right, really quick, let's see. Eleni says good vibes.
Yeah.
And Martin Taylor says greetings from the UK. Great stuff.
So I also have another project called ALX 106. And so that's like what I'm putting out mostly now, just because I made so much of it last winter. And that's a big thing. And then you can find all my music under perpetualjoy.bandcamp.com, because that's the label that I started over the winter. So we can talk more about that later. But yeah, as far as like getting into house music, man, it's like, I was really into disco and really into like new disco when that came out. The whole blog house thing was around when I was in the math rock band. And
when was this? Like about what
trying
time?
to think, like probably like 2008, 2009. And I was still doing that, but I had started Man Cub, and I was like, Man Cub was funny because I like didn't want to just be 4 on the floor, but I didn't even know what like house meant. I was just like, I just thought that meant that I was boring if I just did that, but I did it a lot. And then I started doing it more just naturally because I was listening to more like dance punk stuff. And there was this rad band in Denver called the Photo Atlas, and they were like really fast punk, but every beat was a dance beat. Like everything was just, and they were really cool, big, inspiring into like dancing at concerts instead of mosh pits. So like, there's a band called Q and Not You that I went and saw, that my friends were like, no, you don't like push people to this, like you dance to this. And it like kind of blew my mind because that's like all that I had known, and then Chick 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 was like a huge like turning point for me. And then this band Fujiya and Miyagi, that band really got me into like more dance influence stuff. And then yeah, I got into Holy Ghost, which was like a really big influence, and I was in a band in like I'd say 2000. It was probably like 2012 to like 2016 called Rose Quartz, and that was like very electronic, but we wanted to like bridge the gap between like R&B electronic music and like LCD sound system dance stuff like that, and just get people moving, but also be like really soulful. And I think that was like the singer's vibe was more soul, I was more dance, so we worked out really well on that front. And yeah, it was like that was all about playing and like being, we were a duo for a while, and then we became a band where we got two more members, and we had a drummer, a bass. I played bass and synths, and then we had a guitar player, and then the singer, and that was fun. While we were in that, we started getting asked to DJ, and I think that was kind of one of the big things where we now had to take all of our influences from this dance thing and culminate them together and start figuring out DJ sets. And we realized that like, cut copy and uh, like Empire of the Sun and bands like that sounded pretty good in a DJ set, but like didn't quite fit. Or like in Chick Chick Chick, they sounded good, but they didn't quite fit as good as just like straight electronic. Like when you went and found somebody just making more like straight electronic stuff, it was just like it didn't fit as much. And so then that was like, okay, we got to find these more bigger influences. And I feel like Bibio, I'm forgetting the people that I used to listen to a lot back in the day, but just got more into that style, I guess, and just got into more modern stuff. And then throughout the years just realized that like all their influences were more like 90s stuff like that, 90s and stuff like that. So then started diving into like the history. So it's definitely like working backwards.
Bibio, I remember seeing, like, he had like an Oram mixer or Oram mixer, and like was doing like French house stuff. That's kind of like when I saw some Bibio stuff. But yeah,
yeah, and he's all over the place. Like that dude makes music that's like so inspiring because he makes like super cool, like 808 only, like crazy beats, and then he makes like really amazing, like singer songwriter, like indie stuff. Like he's just all over. But
that brings up an interesting point. Like, I don't know, around that time, it was kind of like formative years of trying to figure out like for me, like, what am I going to do? How do I fit in this thing? And, trying to push electronic music in an area where there's no electronic music. But like, the thing, I took some classes with Point Blank, and the thing that was pushed was like, oh, you got to have like one artist name, and you just put out like one style of music. And otherwise, people just like, if you put out, I don't know, if you're a house guy and you put out an ambient thing, then they're just like, oh, well, that's it. But what do you think?
Oh, fuck that. It's like, that's the hardest thing. And that's been an identity crisis for me forever, is like, as soon as I got into making music and as soon as any of my bands got anywhere near successful, I had people coming in and telling me how to get more successful. And if you just did this, you would get more success. And if you just did all that, and then I would do that and people wouldn't like it because it was just fucking generic. And like Man Cub, when you listen to it, it's like the production's awful. I told you how it was made. It was terrible. But like the energy is just so like there, and like the ambition is there. And like the idea when we started that project was like, we're going to rush the hell out of this. We're just going to literally make tracks as fast as we can. We're going to get shows, and we're just going to go and go and go. And that worked really well. And then when people told us like, you have to use Ableton to be taken seriously, you have to like make stuff that sounds better, it was like, well, I'm listening to bands like Neon Indian, and like that's not like the best production. It has a vibe, and like our stuff has a vibe. But then people can get in your head with that. And then that's been a thing for me forever. I mean, I started the Nasty Nachos project out of the idea that it was the silliest name and I would just make whatever I wanted. I make house music, but if you go listen to the stuff that's on Spotify, you're going to hear a pop record, and you're going to hear a track entitled Shake That, which is literally about shaking dick. And it's like a super stupid, silly vocal track. None of my house music has even made it because I don't on like streaming platforms yet, because I don't necessarily feel that it's to that level yet that I want it to be at, to be releasing it and be promoting it. Um, and yeah, I feel some weird pressure to be some certain thing if I'm gonna call myself house. Like I have to be at this certain level. Um, and like, I mean, that's like so funny. That's why we started the label called Perpetual Joy, because it's like we're just gonna do what makes us happy. And like this ALX 106 stuff, like I made over the winter, and it was like super therapeutic, and it's some of the like my most favorite music I've made. And it's like I had some guilt going through that where I was like, man, I should be making house music. I should. This is what I said I was gonna do. This is what I should be doing. But I was making music that I liked, and also music that was making me feel good and complete at the time, and just helping me get through lockdown and other personal stuff I was going through. So it's just like I feel that and I get that. I took a class with this dude, Justin J, over the winter, and he really changed a lot for me. And one of the biggest things he did, and he said this to Will Clark too in an interview, he believes that all musicians should have kind of two personalities. You have the musician producer guy, or person who's like, that's a person who's just the artist, right? You have the artist personality who's making stuff and getting stuff, like just making stuff that makes them happy. And then you have the manager side. And the manager side is the person who shows up and tells people what the music sounds like and who should play it, and tells the artist that, you know, what they might want to go after and what shows to play and things like that. But his whole thing was you should never let the manager into the studio. And so it's like, if you think about those as two real people, and you've got the manager who's just like suit and tie guy, really good at schmoozing people, really good at telling you what to do, that person's going to tell you all the things like I was talking about earlier. They're going to just say, this is what you got to do to get big. This is what you got to do to be house. This is what you got to do to whatever. And that person doesn't know what it's like to be an artist, and that person can make the artist feel like shit. And so the artist needs to just work for themselves and keep the manager out of the studio. And then you need to have like, I don't know, I really struggle with it, but you have to spend like an hour a week being the manager and not being in the studio and doing all the stuff like whatever your manager needs to do. So like whether that's submitting to playlists or submitting to DJs, getting your DJ pool ready, organizing all your records, organizing all your demos, doing all of that stuff. That person needs to kind of like forget about the music for a second and do all that stuff. Get your shows booked, get all that going, you know, book the streams, do whatever you're going to do. But that person shouldn't get distracted by music, that's where I get, you know, that's the hardest part for me is, oh, there's an NPC right there, man. I'd rather do that than like type on the keyboard, you know?
Yeah. And it's like so hard. Everything like Instagram and stuff, it's so easy. And yeah, I see what you're saying though. It's like, but it's just like so hard to keep them separate and to
Yeah.
make them
And
distracted.
so, you know, I started this Nasty Nachos thing, and I was like, it's going to be punk rock and it's going to just be whatever I want it to be. And then I still have a really hard time putting out ambient music under that. So I started another project. I also had a hard time, which is super stupid, but I would have a hard time getting gigs at certain places for certain things because they didn't want to book somebody called Nasty Nachos. And it's like, that's so stupid. That's so stupid, but like, whatever. It is really a thing, and that gets in your head too as the artist. Oh man, maybe I should change. So like, I made something that's a little bit more palatable when you first hear it. It doesn't have the word nasty in it, you know? But like I said, one of my favorite bands is called Holy Fuck. they don't let that stop them. You know, another one of my favorite bands is Starfucker. Yet again, another band with the word fuck in it. It's like, you know, I'm sure that they've had hard times getting booked at certain places, but it's just like that's who they are and what they do. And I feel like that's the attitude that's the most attractive to me when I'm looking for other artists. Is people that just do whatever the fuck they want and do it with passion, and you know, do it with conviction. And I think that like there's like a certain way to go about it, but I feel like a lot of times when it's just like I'm this person and I just only do this, it's like, cool, well, what else do you do? You know, as a DJ, how many times have you played probably not the most appropriate party, but like playing a party or playing house music or something, and someone's like, can you just play a hip hop beat, like just change it up? Like it's like I've gone to clubs with friends and they like that don't love house and they don't understand the history and don't understand whatever. And it's like they just think they get bored so quick. And it's like, yeah, there's other things you have to focus on. But at the same time, like people love variety, you know? So I don't know. I'm just rambling, but
No, it's great, man. I mean, yeah, totally agree with you. Oh freak, I forgot what I was gonna say. I had a question. Oh, DJing. So DJing came in the picture with that band. Is that
yeah,
what, like,
pretty much. Like it came in the picture at the band, and then like the more I did electronic music, the more people just started to ask me if I did it, you know, and it was like, yeah, sure. And I started out terribly, you know, not knowing what I did with no equipment, and then kind of worked my way up and figured out what I liked to do. And now I'm really into being more creative with it, where like if you have 3 or 4 decks, you can just like set up your library in a way to where you might just have a beat in one, you know, have some beats in a folder, and then disco tracks in a folder, and be able to do live disco edits and stuff like that. And I got a lot more into making disco edits, you know, just like tracks that I think would would hit hard if they just had it, you know, a 909 under them. So I've been doing that a lot more. But yeah, it kind of just spawned from being in the band and just getting sets where people didn't want 4 people. You know, it's like we have a small stage, we want quick turnarounds, we just want you to DJ. And then that turned into like a side hustle where like I play events around town, like you know, like Denver flea market and things like that, like hipster flea markets and random events like that, like beer festivals. You know, it's like, oh, we're gonna have like 40 different breweries and we need a DJ. Like I love that kind of stuff because I like with those most of the time. I mean, I won't take them if they tell me what to play, number one, but two, it's like I can just play super chill, fun vibes, and so that kind of helped out a lot too. Is just like getting into that scene and getting more into like the event scene, which is like all you got to do is play stuff that doesn't make people mad and show up on time, and like you're a good DJ.
yeah. So what is your what do you typically play? Like, I mean, do you stick to like what's on the charts or what's current, that kind of stuff, or?
I play more like Harvey Sutherland, Quartet, um, like super chill, like housey chill into like disco, like new disco and like disco edits, um, and like I play a lot of like Brazilian disco. Like that was a thing I got into a few years ago. Was like this guy Lincoln Olivetti was like a huge producer down there. Like I don't remember what years, like in the 80s or something. He produced so many people, and so I got really into like finding everything he did. This guy Jorge Ben, who he has a track that people think Rod Stewart stole the melody for "If You Think I'm Sexy" from. It's called Taj Mahal, and it's like that melody, but it's such a good track. And I got really into that. There's this other band I think called Jutro Mundo, and they do like more like I think they're more modern. They do like edits and like revamps and things like that, but it's all in this Brazilian style. And I just love the like groove, the percussion and the drums are so rad in those. And then the musicianship is just like always like next level because it's the, you know, fast melodies and coming out of like the samba roots and stuff. It's like just got a lot of really cool character, but then it's 4 on the floor and super happy. And like, no one can disagree with that. And I'm like, I'm definitely playing more stuff like that and Jack J. And then I get into like I love this label called Shall Not Fade. There's this dude called they're out of Bristol. There's this dude called Felipe Gordon who has a bunch of really good music on there. Cody Curry, Black Loops, this guy Joel Holmes. They're all making like, and then Toytonics too, like that label. So those guys are all making like super jazzy, disco influenced house, and it works in the club and it works at events like that too because it's just like fun, happy, catchy, but it's not just like it's not Ariana Grande, you know.
Yeah. So you mentioned you had an MPC, and so like on the subject of DJing and producing, I mean, did you get into like digging for records? You ever and
Yeah,
sampling?
I like not as much, as I would like to. I feel like I don't have the attention span for that. Like I have a ton of records, but I have a ton of records that I listen to. You know, like my wife and I's relationship was built on like getting together. Our first few months of dating was just mainly hanging out at my house and listening to records. And we still listen to tons of records, and we have a bunch, but we're listening to more like, you know, we listen to the full record. I haven't really gotten into the chopping thing as much. Like, and every time I put a record player near in the studio, I start to think about it and I start working with it, but then like I just will like patch instead. You know, it's like something that I don't really feel like I have spent enough time doing. I'd be like, it's like I said, it's something I wish I did, but it's just something I don't do.
There's a label in Hawaii called Aloha Got Soul.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of them?
No, I'm gonna check it out.
Okay, so they put out it's a guy, and I think he just like licenses just like old funk, like all recorded in Hawaii and stuff.
Sick.
Um, yeah, but while we were there, I was checking out his stuff, and we would try and sample a lot of his stuff, a lot of the stuff they put out. But
Totally.
I got some vinyl, man. I'll send you a record.
Okay.
It's from that label. It's pretty sick.
That'd be great.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, sick. So let's go to the comments real quick. So Yalu, let me pull this up. Greetings from Italy. Give us some spoilers about new modules.
We just put a snare out, guys. That's all.
Which is dope.
At KnobCon, you can probably, I know you can find some videos around. We showed like an oscillator that we're working on, and it's super cool. It's got like through zero FM. It's got some really cool waveforms that are. It's got your standard. It's an analog oscillator. It's 100% analog, but it's got some cool like an analog. I don't even know how to call it. Like it's an analog emulation of supersaw, which is hilarious to call it an analog emulation, but that's basically what it is. It's a saw wave. And then you can add LFOs to, I think they're called reanimators or something, but circuits that basically add another spike, and then you can LFO those back and forth, and that creates the sound of a swarm. And so you can get, one waveform, two waveforms, all the way up to 7, and you can get like a really rich sounding analog supersaw out of that. And then an alpha wave, which is just what we've been calling it because it's inspired by the Alpha Juno, which is a saw wave with a chunk cut out, like a pulse cut out in the middle. And with ours, you can choose how many pulses you cut out. And I think you can go up to 4, and then you can pulse width modulate those. And so that gives you like an overtone. And honestly, it's like with 4, you still have the fundamental, and you have this like high end thing. I haven't tuned to figure out like what it is, but it sounds like a fifth above, just from when I've heard it a few times. When you filter it, it sounds like you've got two oscillators in one, and it's super housey sounding. That's 8 HP, so just like a nice small dope oscillator. Spoiler alert.
Sounds incredible, actually. That's so awesome. Analog super song.
Yeah, it's gonna be super rad.
Okay, so do you have like an ETA on that?
No,
Perhaps?
no.
No ETA?
Yeah.
Okay.
When you ask for spoilers, you just get the spoilers.
Cool, man.
But yeah, it's one of those. We're still working out the interface. It's like we thought it was done at NobCon, and then we like played with it enough that we're thinking that we might change some hardware stuff, which will make it take longer.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so it's analog, so probably not as affected by the chip shortage. Is that right?
Maybe not. It's still possible. There is like I don't know. There is a microcontroller on it that does like switching, but it's a super low cost one. We should be able to find it, but I'm not necessarily I don't really have my fingers into that. I don't really know too much about it. But the idea is to hopefully be working on more analog stuff and stuff that works around the chip shortage for sure. And that was one of the ideas. But we had started this before all of that, and I think we're just like, I think we had already bought enough chips for this one, but it's like interface is everything to WMD, and that's like really it. It's like when you play something and you realize that like you made this button a push and hold to do this feature, but you want to tap that feature so you can do it quicker and more in time, then we have to figure out, well, maybe we need to change some stuff around. And unfortunately on this one, we don't think that what we like the hardware we came up with is going to allow that like playability that we want. So we think we have to add or take away, or I think we have to change it. So that takes longer than just changing the firmware, because you have to re-spin the whole thing.
I was gonna save WMD for later, but I guess we're kind of already into that.
It happens.
Yeah, I mean you're Mr. WMD, man.
Yeah. In some ways, for sure.
So I had actually looked up. I was trying to look up William Mathieson to find out about him. So could you talk about the origins of WMD and like kind of where you got involved and how you got involved?
Yeah. So William started the company in like 2007 with a guitar pedal called the Fat Man. It was an analog envelope filter, and I met him, I think, that year in college. I think he had just graduated or was graduating soon. I think he may have just graduated. I was a sophomore, either a freshman or a sophomore, and I was walking out of one of the studios at the school. We call it the core because it's like in the middle of a building, and there's like 4 studios in the middle of the building. So they called it the core. And I was walking out of that, and he was out. He was just like there with one of his pedals in his hands, telling people about it. And that was like before I'd started Manco, but like when I was like just starting to like think the guitar pedals were the future. And so I just went up to him, and he was talking to people. So I started talking to him, and I was like, "Is this yours?" He's like, "Yeah, I just did it, and like this is my thing." And I was like, "That's so cool." He's like, "You want to borrow it?" And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, you want to borrow it?" It turns out we lived like a block away from each other. So I was like, "Yeah, dude, totally, I'll borrow it." So then I borrowed it. I used it for like 2 weeks. I put like my Casio drum machines through it and ran a bunch of stuff through it, and it was cool. But like I wasn't really recording then, and like I didn't want to buy it because I had no money. And so I called him to give it back, and he was like, "Oh, I'm not home right now. Just give me a call later." So I called him again, same thing. And he called me like 2 weeks later, was like, "Are you around?" I was like, "Oh no, I'm not around." And then I never heard from him again. And so yeah, effectively I just stole this pedal from the guy. And 4 years later, one of my friends had started working for him, but 4 years later I found out that he was doing this like synth meetup in Denver, and it was one of the first synth meetups, and it was like mostly modular, but we're all just going to get together in this store and we're going to talk about it. So I was that guy that so many people are now coming to me at trade shows, and you know, anyone who's watching and anyone who does watch in the future, like, don't be shy. Just come up and hang out, because we're all that person at one point. And I walked up to William and was like, "Hey, dude, check this out," and showed him this pedal that had just been all the paint chipped off. Like, I've used this thing for 4 years straight, so like I completely destroyed it. And he's just like, "Oh shit!" We were just laughing at each other, and I still didn't have any modular, but I like got to go play with stuff, and that was one of the sparks. And then a few weeks later after that, maybe a few months later, one of my buddies who had been working for him called me up and was like, "Hey, I'm moving to Seattle. Um, would you want my job at WD? Would you want a job at WD?" And I was like, "Absolutely." So I worked at this music store, and it was online, and I wasn't very happy, and I had to drive really far to get there. So I started working for WMD like nights, and I would just solder. And that was kind of the deal. I did that, and then after a few not after like a few months, like we moved, and then I became full time, and then probably about a year in, we were putting out all the WMD SSF stuff, and that was like 12 modules dropping at once with the monolith keyboard. And I was like, "Are you gonna make videos for this? It seems like the only way to get the word out is like YouTube." And he was like, "No, like I just don't have time for that. Do you know how to make videos?" And I was like, "Yeah, like I took video production in high school. Like I still make videos for fun. Like I know how that works." And so I started making the videos. And if you listen to those old ones, like you'll hear my voice shaking because I'm so nervous, and I'm like reading off of a page because I didn't want to say something wrong. I was like so worried that Muff Wiggler would just like explode and just call me out if I said something wrong. And but then yeah, so I started doing that, and then like as he started, like he had a kid, and like his family started growing and things like that, and that's when it was like, "Hey, can you take over more responsibilities, more and more and more?" So I do all the sales, I do the marketing, and manage all the dealers, and then do all the just outward facing stuff that I can. But yeah, as far as William goes, like he went to electrical engineering school for 2 years, dropped out, went to school at CU Denver, which is where I went, got a degree in recording arts on the technical side. I got a degree in music business. So I was like on the other side. I was on the business side. He was on the technical side. And but yeah, so he did that, but he was always just making pedals, and like for that Batman pedal, he had like a schematic, and he was like in one of these classes, and he was drawing the schematic, and this kid next to him was like, "What's that?" He was like, "Oh, it's this pedal I'm building." And I actually that guy was like really into it. So then a couple weeks later, he had sold a bunch of these pedals to Analog Haven. So he went to that kid and was like, "Hey, like, do you want a job? Like, would you help me build these pedals? Like, I need some help." So that dude was like, "Yeah," and that guy's still at our company. His name's Phil. And so it's kind of a cool thing where like, William was just like kind of happened upon it, built some pedals, sold them, tried, just like sent them to like guitar reviewers and stuff like that, sent them out to stores and stuff, got a couple contracts, and Analog Haven picked him up, they bought quite a few of them, which really helped him out. And then he had the Geiger counter. And the Geiger counter is the one that kind of like the catalyst of like this new thing that we did, because he did the Geiger counter, Analog Haven bought some, and then Sean was like, "You need to get into Eurorack." And this is, I think, 2010. And he was like, "You need to see this, because guitar players don't really like your stuff because it's way too crazy." It's like the envelope filter had a 12 position switch on it, which like guitar players don't know what knobs do to begin with. And 12 positions on the switch, it's like that's too many. And then the Geiger counter had an encoder with 256 waveforms. And then guitar players, the whole thing would be like, you get a sound, you think you like it, but then you turn one knob and you're never going to go back. You're never going to get that sound again. But like modular guys love that shit. Guitar player guys, not so much. And so, yeah, I think it was 2010 or 11 that he converted the Geiger counter to Eurorack and really kind of just found his home there. realized that like he could make stuff that was crazy fully featured, and he could expose every pin on a microcontroller, find a chip that he thought was cool and expose every pin on it, and just put a jack to it, because why not? And that's like where the Synchronine Expand comes from. He found a chip that he really liked that's like a analog switch capacitor filter that he really liked, and that was but then it had all these crazy points that he could just like expose, so he did that with like PLL and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think that his whole thing was really about experimentation, and then when we got together, I was pushing it to be more like, I got into hex inverter stuff with the drums, and I was like, someone needs to make a dope mixer, you know, like there's no good mixers. And then we had all started, a few of us at the shop had started playing shows with modular, and William went to one of them and noticed that the guy he went to watch could play about 10 minutes, and then he had to just, it was done, you know. And so he's like, hey, you'd be able to play a lot longer if you had pre-fader listen like in a DJ mixer. And so then he designed the performance mixer. And I'd say that that's everything that started WMD, because it was like, oh shit, live performance. That now we have the performance mixer, you can cue, you can do that. Let's just push towards that. And I remember when we started, I was like, you should make a stereo filter, like the high pass on the right, low pass on the left. It's really cool. Like a DJ thing. And he, at the time, he was like, well, people aren't really doing stereo stuff in modular. It's all like mono voices, you know? And I was like, right, but like there's drums and stuff. Like it's going to happen. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. And then we did the mixer. And then like after the mixer, he's like, came to me. He's like, dude, I got this sick idea. We should make this filter with this high pass on this side, low pass on this side. And I was like, yeah, we should. We should totally make that. But, you know, and so, yeah, I'd say like he went from being a really experimental engineer to being more of like a really purpose-driven, analytical and logical engineer trying to make things to solve more problems. And that's what we talk about now. It's like when anyone comes up with an idea for a module, like one of the first questions is, what are you trying to solve with this? You know, what hole is this going to fill, and what problem are you trying to solve?
Wow, that's incredible, man. That's quite a story.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's needed that. It's inspiring.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's super cool, and like it's really interesting. Like him and Mason, our software designer, like they get along really well, and they, you know, because they search for solutions to things and they search for problems. And you know, you can go to school. My dad's an electrical engineer, and he talks about it all the time. It's like you can go to school and they can teach you things, but they don't necessarily teach you like what the why. You know, they just teach you how. And so like I get to watch these two engineers, like, and we have another hardware engineer, Steven. We get to watch these three engineers like figure out not only problems to musical solutions, but then problems, you know, in the engineering realm to make those things happen. And it's really fun for things to go from idea to like fruition, you know?
Yeah, and the performance mixer is incredible. It's like so much, it does so many things like more than its size.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds great, super clean. I mean, it gets really hot, but other than that, it's really nice.
Yeah. Sick, man. So does he make music as well?
Yeah, so he has a couple freak boutiques. So if you go to WMD and look at our old freak boutiques, he usually plays like the anniversaries. He makes incredible music. He's like really inspired by like Portishead and the Prodigy and like trip hop kind of stuff, you know, and more down tempo, like chill trip hop kind of stuff. And it's really cool to see when he plays, because he sets up like big scenes. You know, like when I play, I'm a lot more into the like, I set up a couple patterns, but then I just go and like we set up these instruments to be able to like make stuff up on the fly and to be able to just like make decisions when you need to make decisions. And William is definitely more of one who like he'll like write an entire set, and when he shows up, he's like, I got about 27 minutes because he's practiced it like 4 or 5 times, like all the way through and timed it and figured it out. And he definitely lets himself have freedom to play something longer or shorter depending on how he's feeling. But he sets up these things, and what he gets out of that is really cool because he builds transitions in and he builds drops in and he has all this stuff. So when he plays, he spends a lot of time on it, and it's always super impressive. He doesn't play as much as we all wish he would because he has so much to do at WMD, and with the parts shortage, I mean, like that's literally like his day. Most days is just like hours of just searching for parts, So he doesn't like spend as much time as I'm sure he wishes and that the rest of us wish he does. But like when he does, he crushes it. Like he's really good.
Okay, so let's flip back over to music, and on this subject of crushing it with prepared music versus improvised stuff. I saw one of your sets on a stream, and I know you kind of come in a little more prepared, like you have some patterns and stuff ready to go,
Yeah,
and like
depending. Yeah.
out of like I don't know whatever 8 to 10 people that were playing, like as soon as you went on, I was like, oh wow, like you could tell there was like a difference. You know what I mean? Like a good thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, man, it was dope. So can you talk about your process, like making tracks?
Yeah, for sure. Like as far as like live sets go, like preparing for a live set, like I usually come up with like my main voice is the assimilator. So I have the WMD drums. So I have kick drum, clap, and fracture, chimera, crucible, and now Kraken. So those five. Then I use 909 hats in assimilator. So I have an open hat and a closed hat. So that's 1 and 2. Number 3 is an oscillator. So it's literally just a single cycle waveform. And depending on what kit I'm using, like I set up different presets, I have a different waveform in there. And then number 4 is a second oscillator that modulates the first one via phase mod. So if I want to, I can. And then the next 4 channels, 5 and 6, are usually going to be like a stereo pad or like a sample of chords. And then 7 and 8 are going to be a sample of some other texture. Most of the time it'll be a vocal or like some sort of weird vocal chop. It won't necessarily sound like a vocal, but it's derived from that. Or just like some weird percussion hit or something. So a lot of times when I'm playing, that's kind of like my setup in the modular, and then I always have the 2 sends full. I have the aux 1 is always like usually magneto, or chronoblob, and then aux 2 is either going to be chronoblob or a reverb. And then I have the whole mix going through a muscle compressor, an overseer, and then which is the stereo filter. And then that I also have it going through an axis through a reverb, so I can just send some of the master to a reverb. So like one of the things I do a lot is like high pass the whole mix, send it all to a reverb, create a huge wash, let that tail ring out, and go to something new. That's like a really nice transition piece inspired by DJing. I just got Zoya, and I recreated that patch in that, which I'm really excited about because now my idea is to like make a bunch of things that are master effects to use like that in different presets. So that's like my plan with Zoya. Hopefully, it'll work. But yeah, so that's kind of it on that side. And then sometimes, a lot of times I'll have the MPC too, and then the MPC is usually just going to be like conga loops and like auxiliary percussion loops, and then I use it as like a synthesizer that I can loop, so like live loop. So I'll have like the Mellotron or the Selena plugin pulled up, and I'll have that like set up on 4 different tracks but with nothing on it. And then when I'm playing, if I get inspired by something I do on the modular, I can play that live over there. And sometimes I prepare more stuff on the MPC, but a lot of times when I do that, I feel like it just gets stale because it's not necessarily, I can't like change it as fast as you can. Where if you prepare something on the modular and you feel like the filter needs to come down on the bass line, you just do it, you know? But yeah, so that's kind of like the setup that I've been rolling with is like a pretty like one bass line, one pad, one vocal, drums in the modular, and then auxiliary percussion. And I feel like that has a lot to do with why my stuff sounds more filled out or more like produced. Is that I'm always like a lot of times you get to the hi-hat, clap, shaker. That's what I can do in the modular. I can always add one more line to fill out percussion. And I think just doing that with like even like an 808 clave or an 808 tom or something, just something to add just one more element on top of that really helps. And then yeah, and that's pretty much where I'm at with it. And then when I prepare stuff, it's mostly preparation in the modular, like writing a bass line against a pad line, and then everything else kind of goes from there. And when I play live, one of the reasons why I love Metron so much is what I try to do now, especially, is one variation per idea and one session per idea. So it's just like I take one session, I save it, and I only do one variation, only save one variation, and then I make myself come in and play those differently and like make new variations on the fly. So I always think of like, what can I do with this bass line? I'll copy and paste stuff over and make a new bass line on the fly and see what that sounds like. And I'm always trying to improvise as much as possible when I play. So if I save anything, I would call them seeds. That's all I'm saving. It's just like a seed of an idea. I used to do it where my Metron, I would have like 4 sessions saved. And that's the song, and each session would have like multiple variations. But unless you're practicing like a ton to like play back a track the way you want it to play back, like I don't feel like I have that discipline. And whenever I play live, even if I give myself that discipline to practice it, when I play live, I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to play that song now. I just want to jam, you know? So I've been trying to make it more where it's like the saved stuff is just seeds of an idea.
Yeah, that's super cool, man. That makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna come jam congas for you.
Yeah, dude.
You know, as drummers, I was like, I'm trying to figure out how to incorporate, more drumming into this thing.
Yeah,
But
so
I don't know.
play drums too?
Yeah. Played for a long time, and then went to school, did it through college, and majored in music and all that. So
yeah. And then when you play live, are you doing more like random sequences when you're making sequences? It's always new and it's like using random generators, or?
Yep, it's always random. I have some anchor stuff. Like I anchor, everything revolves around just the kick drum and a offbeat hi-hat.
Right.
And everything else just goes around that. But yeah, I mean, it's all random bass lines, random leads, and like half the time, okay, like most of the time, I feel like I'm just like I'm hanging on, like, oh, is this gonna be bad?
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
That's the thing about like transitions too, is like with Eurorack, is it's like, all right, I'm gonna build up this stuff, and then it's like, fuck, I gotta turn 4 things down and a reverb off. Like, oh, do it. Like order of operations of like which one can come off first and not be distracting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Mason is like super into your channel. He's the one who turned me onto your channel, and he's really been inspired by the random bass lines and stuff. And he got a teletype and has been making, like, I don't really know how to explain what you do in teletype. He's been coding sequencers in there that generate random sequences, but based on shit that he thinks he's gonna like. So he can he's seeded the sequencer in some way to where when he just hits random, it does something, but he thinks he's gonna like it because it has parameters set, and it's a super cool way to do it. I'm definitely more like, because of the music theory side and like playing bass and playing, like I have a bunch of vintage synths and like producing so much. I'm definitely more of the like, you know, I either want to play it in and have it loop, or I just like I love Metron because I can just like go in, set input quantization to like 3 or 4 notes with like a couple octaves, and then I can just go. It's kind of pseudo random at that point, but I can like pick the steps, move the voltage, and just be like, oh, I think this is going to sound dope, and then listen to it when it comes out. And that's like a fun way. That's how I sequence on the fly. But yeah, random. It's like I just don't trust it enough. You know, it's like I just can't. My brain can't like handle like giving up control. I feel like I got into all this shit. My story earlier, I got into this because like I couldn't control enough. You know, and it's like now I can control everything, so I don't want to give it up to like. Don't want to give that up. You know.
Yeah, it's definitely a double-edged sword though, because I mean, I did a set in VR and like I'm, going there improvised, pretty much unprepared, and actually my setup was really jacked that night, um, and so I was just like on edge the whole time. But then the guy that goes on after me is Mikey 303, and
Mm-hmm.
he was like a beta tester for the M8 tracker. I don't know if you've seen that
Yeah,
thing.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Um, but his stuff like it sounded like complete tracks. Um
That's trackers, dude. That is like that's what it's all about.
yeah, yeah. But and I talked to Honey Smack about it. I was like, I didn't feel like I feel like he was up at like 9, 10, and I'm like down here at like 5, 6,
Yeah,
but
it's whatever. Though everybody likes different stuff, and that's what it's all about.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like with the random thing, like and just doing that, like or like just feeling the stress. Like I've done a lot of sets where I come completely unprepared and just start from having the patch and start from scratch and just write stuff the whole time. And obviously, some random voltage generation would help me. Someone in the chat just said win random on Volterra, and like yeah, soon actually, because that's one of the things with the. I can't say like soon, like as in tomorrow, but I can say that we're going to be working on it. Like one of the things with the chip shortage is like, well, we might as well be working on one of these, working on a firmware release, and we let the weird bugs stack up, and like there are some stuff that we got to fix, so we let some stuff stack up so we can have a lot to crush at once, and be able to treat it like a project rather than treat it like an ongoing thing where every time something comes up you have to go away from what you're doing to fix it. It's like everything's so minor that it's like we just waited for stuff to stack up, and then the get the feature list that we think is really important, such as random. Getting that when we have all that stuff together, it's like smashing it all at once, like one project, rather than spending just perpetually doing it. Because when you perpetually do it, you probably like after a while you're just gonna get burnt out. But yeah,
Makes sense. I just wanted to say thanks to Martin Taylor for your comments. We're seeing everybody's comments in here, but if there are questions, then we'll definitely highlight them.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Um, can you do random to a track group?
No,
Okay.
it's just a track.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah, you can do random to a variation though. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
full
That's right.
variation, I guess. Now that I think about it, but no, I don't think you can do it to a track group.
Okay.
Not a bad idea.
I might have put it in a ticket for that.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Like Metron's so funny because it's like explaining to someone who doesn't quite get it how you have to how to set it up, where it's like, it's in groups of 4. So if you can figure out ways to have like-minded instruments in a group of 4, or sometimes I skip stuff, so I skip some channels, so my bass line's on the top channel. Like I always put my bass line on number 9, and I always put my pads on number 13 because then I know exactly where they are. They're really fast to get to. And then like if I want to use like channels 10 and 11 for something that involves the bass line, such as like slides or whatever, it's just in succession. I don't have to get weird with it. But yeah, I think that one of the reasons why track group we wouldn't have done that to begin with is just because it's like, are you really going to be using 4 things, that all need to get randomized, But yeah, of course you do. That's the funny thing with modular, man. When you ask that question, are you really going to do this or do you really need it? The answer is like always, someone's always going to say yes.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. How you feeling? We're about an hour and 5 in. I mean, I have plenty more questions, but I mean, if you got to go or whatever.
I'm chilling, dude.
Okay, cool.
Whatever.
So ALX 106, is that alluding to the Juno 106?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And
there's a radio station in Denver called Alice 106 too, so there's kind of like a super, just like, what's up?
This is my daughter. Ara, she gets to tweak some stuff every now and then.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah, that's the best. Yeah, so it's like a subtle reference to that, like Denver stuff. But I mean, if you look at the font, I mean, it is. I found the Juno 106 font, was able to purchase a license for it, and so like, yeah, it's 100% like influenced by that. That's a synth I had wanted my whole life. I got one for an incredible deal in like 2013 or something like that, and yeah, I use it on every track.
What is your 106 story? Because I got one too.
Oh, dude, yeah, 106 stories are the best. So I was working at WMD and I was soldering, and it's in our new shop. So I guess this must have been like 2015 because I think that's when we moved in there. And I was just soldering, and another guy who worked with us came in, and there's a music store like 4 blocks away. And he was like, yo, dude, did you know that Soundtown has a Juno 106? And I was like, no. Like, how much? How much do they want for it? He was like, $275. And I was just like, did you buy it? And he's like, no, man. And he's like, no, I don't know. I just didn't think about it. And I was like, I'm going to take my lunch. And he's like, it's like, do you want to come with me? He's like, yeah, sure. So I literally just like clocked out, went straight there, and just like checked all the keys worked, and then was just like trying to be like contain my excitement to the like cashier guy. I'm just like, yeah, I think I'm gonna buy this keyboard, sir. Yeah, I think it's great. I think I'm gonna buy it. I have 275. That's what you want. Don't say all you want. You want $275 for this? Okay, here it is. And yeah, I walked out, took it home. I have never replaced the chips. I haven't done any maintenance to it. It still sounds absolutely incredible. And it was in like 100% working order when I bought it. It was just one of those like very lucky, very fortunate things. People talk about finding stuff in pawn shops. Some people are good at that. I wish I do try to spend a lot of time scouring pawn shops, but I don't go as much as I should. But yeah, this one fell in my lap. Like a guy, literally, my friend Caleb was just like, yeah, did you know that they have one of those? And I was like, did you not buy it? He's like, no. I was like, cool. Because any of my other friends would have bought that and been like, hey, man, I just got this. You want it? $600. Because that was the time. It was when they were worth probably like $750 to like $850. Like that was probably like the range that you could have gotten a good one for at that time. Probably like $275 was absolutely a steal, but you weren't going to be paying like $1,500.
Yeah, they're silly now, man. It's like $2,000.
Yeah, and I bought a Poly 6 when I was in college. When I was in that Manco band, I bought it for $150 on eBay because it was like for parts only. Like it was just like a piece, just didn't work very well, but it did work, and I got it. And the keys, only like a quarter of the keys worked, and then the memory was all messed up, which made because of the battery issue. So I bought the Kiwi 106 mod, which was like $500, and then literally hid the thing behind my studio desk for like 4 years where I wouldn't look at it. And then when after I had worked at WMD for like 2 years, when I felt like confident in soldering, I finally pulled it out, took it to WMD, and did the mod to it, and then cleaned the keyboard, re-graphited all the contacts, put it back together, and it worked perfect. And was just like, all right, now I have a 106. Yeah,
That's
what's
so
your
dope.
106 story?
Yeah, so I don't know, it was like 2008, 2009, maybe a little later, 2010, 11. Anyway, somewhere in there,
Yeah,
around that same time.
right,
And I had always heard, I was on plugins and came up on computers and stuff. And
right.
one of my friends is like, "Oh, you gotta get an analog synth. Juno 106 is classic, blah blah blah." And so I tried to get one on eBay, and they would end at like 475, 500.
Yeah,
But for me at the time, I was like, 400 is like the max, you
yeah.
know.
A lot of money back then. I totally get that.
Yeah, it's still uh but yeah, so I would go on Craigslist, and I would just every hour I would check Craigslist and like looking for just a random gear.
Right, yeah.
And I found one and I called them up. It was 2 hours away, and it's just like some mom, and they listed it for 250. And I
Mm.
was like, would you take 220?
You
I'll come get it now.
gotta pay for gas, you know?
Yeah. And they're like, oh yeah, yeah, that sounds great. I was like, okay. So I drive 2 hours to pick it up at some gas station in the middle of the night. And so I was asking them, I was like, well, whose keyboard was this? And they said, oh, it was my husband's brother's, who left it in his closet. He moved away or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so it had just sat in the closet for like 20 years or
Oh,
something. I don't know, something stupid.
yeah.
And they were like, yeah, we wanted to give it to our son, but he doesn't like piano. He wants to play guitar.
Oh, man.
and it's really bad now looking at it, but like back then I was like, $200, that's not terrible. It's not.
Right.
He's gonna get an okay guitar, and
Oh,
we get
yeah.
this. But it needed work. It needed a bunch. It need the what is it, the acetone bath.
Right.
So to do that, and luckily that fixed all the voices and all the issues it had, and to just clean it up, it just needed to be cleaned up. So
Yeah, just like, I guess the work I've done to mine is over, like, right when the pandemic started, and we were like ultra locked down. I took apart all of my synths and like was like, I'm gonna fix everything that's wrong with my synths. So I had a Prophet 08 that had a bad jack and a busted key, and so I took that apart, super glued the key back together, replaced the jack. I went through the Juno 106 and I replaced every fader and all the jacks, and that just helped a ton because like I was having like just like warbly stuff when I like just noisy stuff mostly on the filter envelope. But yeah, I would get to a once I got that done, it was just like amazing. Like it just fixed the whole thing. And I love that. I love it. It's one of my favorite synths I've ever had, and it's like on every track. And that was like the thing for ALX 106. It was like I was just kind of looking around, and I was just like trying to figure out what I might call this stuff. And then I was like made a joke to my head. I was like, I should just call it like Alex 106, and just thought that was really lame. But then when I took the E out of it, I was like, this is sick. So I was like, this is it. And yeah, it's like that's definitely the story behind that.
So there's a guy that has a skateboard shop in the town that I grew up in, and he was into synths before all of us. But his story is a 60. He got a Juno 60, and his dad was walking around the flea market, like 20 minutes away, and he was there early before people are still setting up their tables.
Right.
And there's this keyboard leaning against this truck, and it's a Juno 60. And at the time they're about $800 to $1,000. But
Right.
He's like, hey, is that a keyboard? How much do you want for it? And he's like, yeah, I'll take like 25. He's like, would you do 20?
Yeah, I don't have an extra 5, but
yeah. Money comes out of the ATM in 20s.
Yeah, I know exactly. It's like I can give you 40 or I can give you 20, but I'm not gonna tell you I'm giving you 40.
Dude, I was so jealous. I was like,
Yeah, that's
wow.
amazing, man. I like that's those stories, and like that's what I tell people when they're like, what analog synths should I get and look for? It's like, well, do the research so you know what you can, so you know what you see when you see it. And then, like it'll happen, it will or it won't, but most likely at some point you'll come across something for at least an okay price. You know, it's like I found I didn't buy it, but the Korg like Poly 800 or whatever. So I think super cool, and if you know what you're looking for, like I would have bought this thing if I didn't have the synths I have now, but it was like $200, and it was like, all right, that's a little bit more than I want to pay for it, and it had a broken key, like the key was actually like severed. Um, but like, you know, that's a good deal, and you just plug it into MIDI, and you don't need to use the keyboard anyway, so whatever. But yeah, that's the thing is those deals just like they just come upon you, and then depending on who you are, you can put it on eBay for $1,200, or you can just keep it for the rest of your life. You know.
Yeah. I have a SP1200 that, you know, I don't really use it anymore. But it's just like appreciating so much. I'm like, well, it'd be
Right.
stupid to sell it.
Well, yeah, and like I don't know, those are those things too. I feel that like I don't know. I sold a JX3P for like $100 once because it was like it needed work and I was just frustrated and
Me
I
too.
totally could have fixed it. Totally could have fixed it. But it was before I knew what I was doing. It was before I knew how to fix stuff. But now I'm like, oh man, and like I gave somebody an awesome deal. Made someone really happy. But like that's one of those things where it's like I now am like very cautious before I sell stuff. But I feel like that thing, there's just so much history behind it, you know? It's like just keep it and like keep it in good shape and use it when you want to use it. Like my friend has the Isla S2400 and I borrowed it for a little while and like I didn't really use it at all because of the like interface and I'm like I can use an MPC and just cruise and that thing was just kind of clunky to me. But like the sound was incredible and it's like yeah, every once in a while, dude, just like pull it out, put the Lindrum samples on it, make a cool beat and get the sound, you know, but I don't know if I'm gonna like spend a bunch of time trying to figure out how to like put it in my live set, you
My 3-piece story is it might be a little dumber than yours.
know? Really? Mine's so dumb.
Dude. So Arteria just released the Mini Brute, and it was the only new analog synth out, and it was what, $500.
Right.
And this guy was like, "Hey, you want to trade whatever?" I put the 3P on Craigslist because I was like, "I got a 106. I don't really need it. I didn't have the extra controller, so like all I was getting was like shitty square waves and stuff, and awesome square waves, but at the time, and so I traded the 3P and like $250 for my mini.
Oh, you gave him $250?
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, that's
so
like, oh man, that's tough.
I still have that freaking thing too.
Yeah, I had one of those. I liked it. It got stolen, which was like really sucks. But yeah, I was in a band and we used to practice at this rehearsal space, and I bought a mini, like the car. I bought a mini convertible from my mom, total mom car, but it was like had low miles, badass, super fast. So I bought that from her, and that's what I was driving. And then we were going to go on tour in a few weeks, so we were moving from the rehearsal space to my shed here so we could practice. And so we could practice closer to home, and also in the rehearsal space we were on stage with studio monitor or with real monitors and stuff. So we were like, we need to go on tour and prepare. We need to like play in a shitty environment, so let's go to the shed. And so we put everything, all my stuff went into my car. And I got home from practice at like 3 or 4 in the morning and just totally forgot because I had been practicing for like 3 months in a practice studio, and getting home at 2 or 3 in the morning is not thinking about it. Just that's what you do. You go to bed. So I totally forgot that all this stuff was in my uh, in my car. So it was my bass, the studio, all my synths, which was like a little rack of modular, the Arturia, and then the band's computer, which was like the big deal because the whole set was on the computer, you know. And someone came through and cut the top open of my Mini Cooper, cut a hole in it, and stole everything out of it. And then the next 2 weeks was just spent figuring out how to whatever. Luckily, our band was smart. We have band insurance, so I was able to. You got to check like band insurance is dope, by the way. If you have a company, get it. It's cheap as hell. It's called the one we use is called Music Pro Insurance or Musician Pro Insurance. We insured our entire band stuff, which was like a mixing console and everything, for less than $300 a year, and we used it like 3 times because we got stuff stolen. We had one thing just like get damaged by somebody else. You know, we had like things happen. We used it and it worked, and they would pay out within a few days, and it was really great because with that stuff, because as soon as I got a check, I got to get a new computer, and then I had the set somewhat backed up. You know, I could get back to work, like really finishing it and everything, and then I got a Moog Sub Fatty instead of the Arturia because I found one on Craigslist for cheap, you know. But yeah, that's my mini brew story. I had a mini brew for a while, but then it got stolen. But those things are cool, man. Like, it's just interesting with the JX3P, especially like what you're talking about, without having that programmer. I had the programmer for a little bit, and then I think I lost it. I lent it to someone else or something because I didn't have it when I sold it. But I just didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was just it was so new. And then I got the boutique one, and I started messing with it, and I was like, dude, this thing had like FM and AM, like it had all this really cool advanced synthesis stuff in it that like I just didn't know about. I felt so stupid after I played with the boutique one. I was like, man, I can't believe I did that because it's actually a really cool, powerful synth.
Mm-hmm. I think the M83, there was like a behind the scenes or whatever. Like that's when the prices started going up.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, and just everything, dude. Anything with the word analog in it just went way up real fast. Like even those Akai, like it's like the AX73 or something like that. I forget what that one is, but those are like very similar where it's just like a keypad and a fader. But those things sound great, but they're too expensive now for what they are. Like you used to be able to get one of those for like $300, but you know, it's just where it is. All that stuff, I mean, it just gets older and more people throw them away, the more rare it gets too. You know, people definitely do that because they don't know what they are.
Which MPC are you on, by the way?
Now I'm on the MPC 1. So I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Because they're like updating all their firmware and stuff and adding features. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, Travarsi and I played a set in Denver a few months ago, and I was trying to get it to control the JU or the JX or whatever it's called, JU06, the boutique thing. And I was having some weird troubles with ground loops of like where it was plugged in. It didn't sound how I wanted it to sound. And that thing does some weird stuff when you plug into USB and then plug back into something that's like on the same power. And that morning the morning of the show, they released the update with like the Selena and the Mellotron. And I was like, I know this is a terrible idea, but I'm downloading it. And I got it, and it worked flawlessly. And I was so pumped because it was like, I had synths that I could just pull up and just like, and play. And it worked out really, really well. So I like those. I'm learning more about MPC workflow. Like, Ricky Tinez has been like help. You know, I talked to him a lot, and we were talking about stuff at NobCon, and he was just like, "Dude, like you're not like." It was one of those things where it's like you're not saving these like saving your programs this way. And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know how to do that." And So I'm still learning on like the proper workflow and how to like make programs and then save them so you can use them in any project, stuff like that. Um, Stuff that you should learn right away, but it took me a while. But yeah, man, I think it's a good thing, and I'm learning more about how to use those plugins to create samples rather than just use them as synths, because that was like what I did at first. But you run out of processing power pretty quick when you do that, so it's like use them, make a sample, make that sample dope, and then just use it on that drum program.
Man, it is a small world for sure.
Yeah,
So Novation had reposted one of my videos on their page,
yeah.
and I'm pretty sure it was Ricky.
It was Enrique, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably, dude. I mean, he's the best. His videos are amazing. I love his like attitude and just how like chill he is. And then like he's done some videos with us and for us, and like he's always been like really cool about it and how he does it. Um, and like I appreciate like how he's not like so much just like here's how to use this piece of gear. He's like, uh, I'm making a track and I'm just happening to use this piece of gear and I really like it, so I'm gonna tell you why. Um, I like appreciate that about him. And then as far as like just spread the knowledge, knowledge is power, whatever, like spread the love, like that whole thing, like that is like so embodied in him. And like I feel like when I do get to like hang out and talk with him, like it is like we are like spreading knowledge like so much. Like we're always talking about stuff, and it's always about how to push your music further and how to like how to be creating. Like I appreciate that about him, because we're not just talking about gear because it's gear to sell, and like that's not my thing. Like I make gear because I like, and I work for a company that makes gear because I like to use it, and like we make gear that we like to use, and like I love talking to him so much because it's all about using the gear to make the music and get it out. And that's awesome.
So as far as like getting music and stuff out there, could you touch on your label a little bit?
Yeah, so we started the label earlier this year with the ALX 106 release. I'm going to do an EP pretty soon. So I did one single, and then I released another cat from here in Denver called Solar Cat, and he is 50% of the duo Moss Pig, which you probably may have seen around like on our streams and random people's streams. They are killer, and so Victor Solar Cat. Hold on, my door just opened. Hi, doggies.
Oh, I was gonna say Studio Ghost.
Yeah, no, dogs are like pushing up on the door and just opened it. Yeah, so he's been DJing for like 25 plus years. He's like an older dude in the scene. He's been playing for a long time, and he was really instrumental and just really inspiring in helping me get this started, because he really believes in what we have going on in Colorado as well as what we have going on in just like the synth scene and all the people we've met through the pandemic and Freak Boutique and all this stuff. And so he's been DJing for a long time. He's an acid nut. He has, I don't know how many 303s and 303 renditions he has, but he has them all. And like, he's always calling me being like, dude, I got a problem. I bought another weird 303 type thing, and it's like, I love it, because that's his thing. He's like all about the 303s. The 303 saved his life. I mean, it really is the thing. And he, so yeah, I released one of his tracks that's like his solo project. Is a track he made a few years ago with this really nice sample, just about like why we all love house music. And then the B side is like way more like tech, dark kind of tech house, but not like commercial tech house. And I love that track so much. I play it a lot. And then we just released the second ALX 106 single. And then as far as like the idea behind the label, it's like we've met a lot of people through like, especially in the Colorado scene, and so we're focusing on that like right away. And just kind of giving people an outlet and a platform to put music out with. So as far as like Freak Boutique was that thing, and Freak Boutique still is that thing. It's a monthly kind of open mic night for people to come and perform at. And it's basically like the idea of Freak Boutique is like, doesn't matter what kind of music you play, it doesn't matter whatever. It's like, as long as you have like a modular or semi-modular synth involved in the performance, like just come and play. If it's your first performance, great. If it's your 50th performance, great. We don't care. We don't care how advanced it is. If you're just going to plug an oscillator into another oscillator and make FM sounds, that's awesome. And so Perpetual Joy is kind of the next step from that. So it's like the idea, it's just kind of the natural continuation of that same attitude, but towards releasing music and just supporting the people that we've grown to love through this. So obviously, like, we are trying to release music that we think is like people are going to dig and that like we really like, and then we think like meets a certain level of quality and things like that. But there is no like vibe like barrier. We're not a tech house label. We're not a techno label. Like we are a music label, and it's called Perpetual Joy for that reason. Like, and Victor and he'll stop me all the time on the phone when I'm talking about something about, you know, I want to do this, but it's kind of stressful. He's like, well, that's not Perpetual Joy, man. And that helps out a lot because that's really it. It's like we're not going to do stuff that, you know, just makes us feel like we're not doing it for the right reasons, and that's why it's called that. It's all about just spreading the love, spreading the knowledge. Knowledge is power. Well, my boy, but you know, it's like also just spreading music and spreading joy through music. And like whether you make dark techno, you make black metal, you make whatever, like make super happy house, it doesn't matter. Like all of it is going to bring you joy or someone joy in somewhere, you know, in some way. And that's the whole idea behind it.
That's cool, man. So like, is it primarily digital releases, or are you guys doing
it's all digital releases right now. Like it's one of those things where like we let physical stuff stop us from doing it for about a year. You know, we talked about it for so long, and we let the barrier of doing physical stuff stop us. And we're like, you know, dude, like we can't. One, it's hard. One, it's expensive, and two, just the time that it takes to get stuff made, and then the stress of getting that stuff made and made correctly, and then having it and trying to sell it, like just all of it, especially in a pandemic world, it's like that just like adds a lot of stress, which is like not really what we're trying to do. So as it is right now, it's all digital releases. Like we do have plans to like be releasing art and be releasing cool things that we think like people would like. But for now, especially coming out of summer, like it was slow this summer because like we wanted to do stuff, and like I wanted to like do stuff and go out. I went to national parks and I went and enjoyed myself, and it was like definitely wanted more consistency. I wanted to like release more stuff this summer, but I also was like, I need to take care of myself mentally and physically, and I feel like that's also a big thing in this label. Is like we're just gonna do what we can, but like hopefully the idea is just slowly build up the following of people who think that what we're doing is cool.
Sick, man. That sounds awesome. And just having an outlet for people is, I think that's pretty huge.
Yeah, and an outlet for myself, you know, and like I've definitely like I've submitted to labels, I've gotten approached by labels, and it can be super disappointing, and it is super hard when like, you know, like someone's interested and then you send them an email and then you don't hear back, so then you follow up and you don't hear back, and you're like, well, what was the deal? And then like you talk to them later and they're like, oh yeah, send me stuff. And you're like, I did. It's like, did you not like it? You know, whatever. I think everybody goes through that. Even big people, they go through that. People that are on labels send stuff to the label they always release on and get ghosted sometimes. Like it just happens. People are busy, totally understand it, but it's frustrating. And like I just wanted a place where like my manager, like we were talking about earlier, like my inner manager guy, you know, he doesn't have like the patience to like send a bunch of emails. He just wants to like put something on DistroKid and then, you know, go on vacation while the artist, you know, go on vacation as the artist, I guess. You know, it's like I'd rather be in the studio making music, and I definitely want people to hear it, and I would love for people to hear it. But at the same time, I'm not going to like spend a crazy amount of time trying to figure that out, because like what I want to do is make it and put it out. And I think that after like what we're trying to do is create a body of work, and I think that that's really like the main focus, is creating a body of work and letting that stand on itself.
Sounds dope, man. So let's kind of start wrapping this thing up.
Cool.
Just real quick, favorite piece of gear, piece of advice for everybody out there, and anything else you want to add?
Yeah. Man, favorite piece of gear. Modular gear, probably Metron. As soon as I got into Metron, as soon as we started developing it, it changed my life. It was huge. I make tracks super fast because of it. I would say favorite piece of gear ever is probably my Juno 106, man. Love that thing. It is the best. I just being able to play a synth, just turn it on and just get take a bath in waves. Like that's the one. Piece of advice is a piece of advice I got from Oliver from A Place to Bury Strangers, who's also he makes Death by Audio pedals, the owner of that company. And when I went and saw them play, and I was hanging out. I got to hang out with them, and I got to spend some time with them after the show, and we were talking, and my friend and I were gushing about how we wanted to start a band, and we wanted to I want to make pedals. Pedals are so cool. Like, how the fuck do you do this? Blah blah. It's like, just do it, dude. And it was like, but what? I was like, but we don't have a drummer. He's like, fuck that. I don't have a drummer. My drummer's a guitar player. He's like, I just made him play drums because we needed a drummer. He sucks, but it works. And I was like, but you guys are playing these shows. He's like, yeah, because we just booked him. And his whole thing was like, it's lame. It's just, it's a Nike slogan. But like literally, man, if you want to do something, just go out and do it. That's my biggest piece of advice: is you're never going to do something if you don't do it. And it's like that was huge for me, because it was like, cool. And I started a band directly after that, and right after we started it, we started getting shows. It was like such good advice. Like, man, like if there's anything like that you want to do, just start doing it, because and WMD is a great example of that. The guy just made a pedal, and then made some more pedals, and then got a crew of people that like to do it with him, and now we make some really cool modules. And it's just, I think you just go after it. That's my biggest piece of advice.
Some of the best.
Yeah. Thank you. What was the last one? I forgot. Sorry.
Oh, if there's anything you want to add?
Oh, yeah, just follow us. Follow Perpetual Joy on Instagram. Perpetual Joy with 3 Ys. ALX 106, Nasty Nachos. I kind of cross, promote on all those right now, because Nasty Nachos definitely has the biggest following. But Perpetual Joy's got some really stuff coming out in the next couple weeks. We're going to be putting out a synth pop record. We've also got this more ambient record coming out. So we've got Noise Diffraction is one we're working on, and he's a guy that I met through Free Critique and through the synth community. And then we're working on some other stuff with this dude Monoscene, who's another guy that we met through that. And yeah, just trying to make winter really productive. And as far as WMV goes, stay tuned. We've got stuff that'll hopefully come out by the end of the year. That's the end of the year is coming soon, but we're gonna try.
Cool, man. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. This is super fun.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out. I always enjoy talking synths and music.
So yeah, I'll post after this goes up, I'll post the links in the description for Perpetual Joy and ALX 106 and Nasty Nachos, etc. And WMD, of course.
For sure.
Yeah. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you, everybody who's going to see this after the stream. We really appreciate you. And be sure to check out Alex across various platforms and projects. And definitely look forward to seeing more from you, man.
Yeah, thanks, man.
All right.
Appreciate it. Peace, everyone.